When somebody tells you that you really need something, the first question you ask yourself is, who are they to tell me that I need this? Now, when my dad says this particular item of clothing is really cool, I'm not really going to trust it. And many of you children here would say the same thing. If any of your parents say, this is cool, you instantly think, well, mum and dad have said it's cool. That means it's lame. It's not very good at all. Who tells us and who recommends things really matters. And as we come today for our harvest service, we're going to be looking at just one line from the Lord's Prayer. And the Lord's Prayer is really, Jesus tells us to say it. Jesus tells us to consider the meaning behind it. And so that's why it's important today. Because Jesus has said it. It comes with the greatest, highest recommendation that there is. And particularly today for harvest, I want us to focus on the line, give us today our daily bread. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is hunger. Some preachers, they've got a little stopwatch and they time themselves to see how long they're going. On a harvest service, I don't need a stopwatch because what I do is I listen to the rumbling of your stomachs. And when the rumbling gets too much, I realize it's time for us to eat and fellowship together. But we know what it is to be hungry. Some of you are probably a little bit hungry now. Some of you probably remember what feasting we did last year, and so you've come again. We've all been in that situation, haven't we? Where we've been sitting in a restaurant, we've been waiting all day for the food to come, and then we see our waiter go over to the table with 30 people on it and ask each and every one of them what they want. And you just go, no, we have to wait. Now we know in a human sense what hunger is, don't we? But in another sense, we don't have a clue what true hunger is. Maybe some of you have had that experience of forgetting your lunch money when you go to school. Disaster, isn't it? When you forget your lunch money and you go to school, all day all that you can think about is food. Friends, we are in a country where relatively we have so much. We can be thankful to God that we do not know true hunger. There are many in our society, many in our world, many in Britain who go to bed with the aching pit in their stomach empty, hungry. And that's why today we remember, we give thanks to God, who is a God of provision. My second point is ask. The next thing I want us to consider is that we are to ask of God. It begins, my text today says, give us. That's a request, isn't it? We can ask of God. Isn't that lovely? That we can ask God for our needs. Ask God to help us, to support us. Now, there might be certain things that you are afraid to ask your husband or your wife. There might be certain things you're afraid to ask your mum and dad. There might be certain things you don't want to ask your friends because you know if you ask that question, you're going to be in trouble. I'm very good at asking questions I shouldn't. I'm very good at putting my foot in it. Some questions that apparently you shouldn't ask are questions like, sorry, what was that? I wasn't listening. I was thinking about something more interesting. Have you ever asked somebody that? Or what about, why is your cooking not as good as my mother's cooking? Have you ever asked that? Don't do it, men. It's a trap. Don't ask. It is not a particularly good question. But there's some questions you ask that actually have a very negative response. Sometimes you can ask a question and it can really hurt the other person. Jesus says in this passage, Ask. This is what you can say to God. You can ask God to give you today your daily bread. I just want to stop there and for us to consider it. Imagine you going up to a celebrity and asking them to put them in one of your movies. Imagine that. They're making a movie and you ask them, can I be in your film? Well, what right have you got for that? Imagine going up to a celebrity and asking, hey, you must have made quite a fair bit of money from that. How about just 2 million? I'm not greedy. Give me £2 million and I'll be fine. Who are you to approach somebody of great fame and celebrity status and ask of them? And yet Jesus tells us we can go to God. The one who created the heavens and the earth, we can go to him and ask of him. Now I'm old-ish, and I remember back when the internet was first in invention, do you remember Ask Jeeves? That's a trip down memory lane, isn't it, for those of you of a certain age? Whenever we didn't know something, we'd go and we would ask Jeeves. And sometimes the response would be great, and other times the response would be awful. Friends, you have got somebody more important than a digital butler to ask of. You can go to God himself and ask him. That's what prayer is, when we communicate with God. We are to ask God for our provisions. Ask God each day for strength. Some mornings you wake up and you run into that member of staff, don't you? And you just think, Lord, if I ever need strength, it's now. Ask for our daily provisions, for our daily needs. We have a God who welcomes us to ask him. The third thing I want us to think about today is that we are to receive. God gives good gifts, and we have got to receive them. Now, the first thing I want us to think about when we think about receiving gifts is that gifts are not earned, are they? Gifts are not earned, they're not deserved, but they are freely given. Imagine saying to your husband or wife, it's our anniversary today, but quite frankly, the year that we've had, the way you've acted this year, I don't think you deserve an anniversary gift, so I haven't bought you one. Now imagine saying that. It might even be the last anniversary. That is not a good thing, is it? You buy each other gifts because you love the person, not because they deserve it. I dread to think how many birthday presents I would have received if I had to have deserved all my presents growing up as a child. And even now, actually. Gifts are not something we earn or deserve, but they are something given. A way to show love. In the exact same way, God shows his love to us by what he has given us. And the question is, will you receive him? Not just the good things that God gives us, but will you receive God himself? My nan was an excellent present buyer, but she wasn't a very good present receiver. Now I'm the opposite. If you buy me a present, I will happily receive it. I'm very good like that. But my nan was the opposite. She'd buy beautiful and brilliant gifts and presents, and then you'd hand her the smallest box imaginable, and she'd say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have bought that. You shouldn't have spent this much money on me. Oh, it's far too much for little old me. I think if my nan had bought me a Ferrari and I'd bought her a tyre, that tyre would have been too much of a gift for her. Friends, God has given us far more than we deserve, far more than we can imagine. Every day he keeps us, he sustains us. God has given us so much. Our own health is wholly reliant on him. We do not control how much energy we have. As I'm hurtling towards 30, I know that. Sometimes I wake up and my arms click in a way they shouldn't do. And some of you are a little bit older than 30, and you probably are thinking the same. Every day we wake up is a gift and a provision from God. Will you not only receive the gifts that God gives you, will you receive the one who gives the good gifts? My next point is a very fancy point. Listen to this. My next point is vitality. That's a good word, isn't it? Do you know what vitality means? It would really help me if you did. But do you know what vitality means? Some of you know where I'm going already. Vitality is the state of being strong and active, or the power-giving continuance of life present in all things. What the word vitality means is a posh way of saying life, strength, health. Give us today our daily bread. What we see here is that the bread that Jesus is talking about doesn't just mean physical loaves of bread, but it is talking about a staple food. It is talking about provisions. It is talking about your basic needs being met. We understand this picturesque language, don't we? Because in today's society, we talk about the breadwinner. And we don't mean that the person in the household that earns the most brioche buns. We don't talk about that. We know it's figurative. The breadwinner is the person that goes out and brings in money that can sustain you. Here we're talking about bread as a means of life, staple food. And what God gives us is vitality, life, strength, life in the fullness. Now the word bread here means physical life. The last time I checked, you're all still alive. If you could keep that up by the end of the service, that would be absolutely great. But there is life in here. There is vibrancy in here. We are all alive because God is sustaining us. He is keeping us. But vitality and life can be found more in just our daily provisions. In John 6 and verse 35, it says, "Then Jesus declared," I love that, Jesus declared, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." That's a bold claim, isn't it? Jesus says he is the bread of life. For all the physical provisions that you have, for all that we enjoy this harvest time, there is nothing greater than Jesus himself. There is nothing greater than knowing the love of the gift giver. For God has sent his greatest gift, and that is himself. God has sent Jesus Christ down to earth to live like us, except he never did anything wrong. And by trusting in Jesus, by trusting in what Jesus has done upon the cross, where he died to take away all the things we've done wrong, the penalty, the debt that I owe to God has been forgiven because Jesus has died in my place. That is the greatest gift that God gives, life. Not just life for today, not life in bodies that age and creak and you need a bit of WD-40 on your hips every now and then. God gives us life that is spiritual, that is forever, that never ends, that never stops, that never wavers. There is life in Jesus. Jesus is the bread of life. And I love what Jesus says. He says, "Whoever comes to me," and you say, "Oh, but you don't know me. You don't know my secrets. You don't know my past. You don't know what I've done. I've done this and nobody knows, and I keep it a secret because I'm ashamed and embarrassed." Jesus says, "Whoever comes." And you say, but I can't forgive myself. Whoever comes. You say, I can't live with the guilt of what I've done. Whoever comes to Jesus. There is no limitation. There is no sending away. There is no analysis based on, do you deserve Jesus? We've already thought about that. You don't. You don't deserve the gifts that God gives you, and yet he calls you to come anyway. Isn't that what forgiveness is? You don't deserve it, and yet he calls you to himself. The bread of life, spiritual vitality now and forever. My fifth point is E, every day. It's a very short point. This is very obvious. Every day. Give us today our daily bread. We need God's goodness every day of our lives. There is not a day where we do not need God. Imagine saying to somebody, I'm starving. And they say back to you, well, you ate yesterday. And you think, well, yes, I ate yesterday. I was full. But now I'm hungry again. Today is today. Every day we are a people that are reliant on God. I Googled, what are some things that we should do every day? It was not a fun list, I'll be honest. But here are some of the things that I've pulled out. According to the internet, we should brush our teeth every day. Turn to the person next to you and smell their breath, see if they did. No, don't do that. You should brush your teeth every day. It's a good habit and routine to get into. We should smile every day. Some of you need to hear that in this room, don't you? Smile every day. There should be something in life that makes us glad. I've been talking about it for about 10 minutes. Be glad and rejoice in Jesus. Smile. You should go to the gym every day. No, we'll move on from that one very quickly. We should eat 5 fruit or veg a day. Well, that becomes harder and harder, doesn't it? There are so many things that we need to do every day, but friends, there is no such thing as a Sunday Christian. If you are trusting in Jesus, then it is wonderful on Sunday, it is wonderful on Monday. Every day, the good news of Jesus is beautiful and brilliant. We need his sustaining every day. We need to remind ourselves of the beauty and wonder of Jesus every day. Each day, we need him. And then my penultimate point, satisfy. There was once a famous song, wasn't there? I can't get no satisfaction. Awful song because it's grammatically incorrect, isn't it? Because if he can't get no satisfaction, that clearly means he is getting... I'm clearly not a rock star. I clearly studied English at A level. But it annoys me in that song. But you get the gist, don't you? And you feel like that. We live our lives and it is a slog. Day after day, it's a trudge. It's difficult. There's people, and people are hard to deal with. Life can be so hard. And we are just searching for something to satisfy us. That verse we read earlier, Jesus said, I am the bread of life, and whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Obviously, this is not talking about physical hunger and physical thirsting, but spiritually, in the very heart of yourself, in your soul, not just your body, but in who you really are. Isn't it so easy to jump from thing to thing? Maybe this will satisfy me, and then after 5 minutes you get bored and you move on to something else. There's no greater feeling like getting a new job, is there? You put in the hard work, you put in an application form, you get accepted for this job, and then you go and it's brilliant. And then you have to start working, and then it's not so brilliant, is it? And then after a few years you get bored and you apply for another job, and then you get that job, and it's brilliant, it's better than before. And then the same thing happens. And then you apply for another job. You keep bouncing from job to job, from hobby to hobby, from friendship group to friendship group. I wonder, are you searching for satisfaction? Are you looking for something that will satisfy? Because friends, there is only one who says it, And it's true. Don't listen to any of the adverts. Buy this to make your life less miserable. Are you ugly? Then buy this product. That tends to be what adverts are nowadays, isn't it? Buy this to make yourself better because you're not worth anything. You're not enough. You need this to be happy. Friends, Jesus says, whoever you are, come to me, and you will never hunger or thirst. In Jesus and only in Jesus, there is satisfaction for the soul. There's an old hymn that I love that says, now none but Christ can satisfy, no other name for me. There's love and life and lasting joy, Lord Jesus, found in you. Whatever you're searching for, whatever you're jumping to and fro, nothing satisfies the soul. As good as the food is going to be at the end of the service, it will not satisfy like Jesus. Turn to him. And then my final point. One of the major themes of harvest is that we should be thankful. And so that's my T in the word harvest, is thankful. We should be a people that say thank you. We should be. It doesn't always become the case, does it? There's a great tragic story of somebody that should have been thankful but was really ungrateful. And I read this story and I want to see your reaction because it made me a little bit angry. The story says, me and my family were very poor growing up. And one Christmas, my parents had saved up all that they had to buy us presents. As my sister unwrapped her main present, I remember looking at Mum and Dad and each of their expressions, waiting to see their child open their present with expectation and joy. Finally, they had gotten their daughter a gift that she really wanted. Who cared if we couldn't afford to eat next week? For today, there was happiness. So she opened it up, and completely silently, she then wrapped the present back up. And the mother said, well, do you like your present? Do you enjoy it? And she said, well, my sister can have this because it's pink. And it's pink, and I wanted a grey Game Boy. It's the wrong colour. I don't want this. And so in her mood, she stormed off to her bedroom, shouting, this is the worst Christmas ever. And she slammed and she locked the door. And the story says that I saw my mum for the first time with her eyes welling up with tears. My mum was inconsolable, and even my dad had to leave the house to have a walk and probably a quiet cry to himself. I have never felt so sorry for my parents since. Isn't that a tragic story? They've tried to do everything they can, but there is a level of ungratefulness. Doesn't that make you a little bit outraged? You read that and you think, oh, ungrateful so-and-so. I would have loved a Game Boy, don't care what colour it was when I was younger. How ungrateful. And so we start wagging our finger and saying this is awful. This child needs to be taught a lesson. But the truth is, when we get a bit closer to home, it gets scarier. For how thankful are we of what we have? It's very easy to say, oh, they're ungrateful, they're never thankful. But it's much harder to look at ourselves and acknowledge that we are not thankful for the daily provisions that our God gives to us. Worse than that, you enjoy the gifts that God gives you, but you're not thankful to him. Worse than that, you enjoy the gifts that God gives you, but you are not thankful that he died for you. You're not thankful that Jesus came to bring you life. I wonder, this harvest, do we need a new appreciation? To be thankful to our fellow man? To be thankful to God for our daily physical provisions? But maybe today we need to realize and think, God has sent Jesus that we might be forgiven, that we can be saved, that we can enter into heaven with him. Are you thankful for that? Do you know and believe this Jesus? Are you thankful? Or are you still rejecting the truth of who God is? The God who says, whoever comes to me, there's a few whoever's in this room, isn't there? Whoever comes to me shall not hunger or thirst. Have you been to Jesus? Amen.